Hello and welcome to the Foxfire Farmhouse.
Welcome back.
I'm Josh, one of the hosts here on the podcast.
And I'm Elijah, one of the hosts here on the podcast.
And we're here to talk today about all things storytelling and digital media.
Oh, yes.
That's kind of our thing. That's what we talk about. It's what we do. It's what we like to be about.
Yeah, we like to be about movies here in the podcast realm. We like to be about a lot of things.
We find ourselves talking about all sorts of things on the podcast.
Yes, and most of the time, it's a lot of rabbit trails from movies.
Yes,
we start at movies.
We start with movies.
And then we
Go somewhere else.
Which is usually to another movie.
And then we string a few movies together, daisy chain them,
Yeah.
and then come back.
Yeah.
We bring it back in.
It's like the Oregon Trail of movie podcasts.
The Oregon Trail. And very often we die along the way.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, we die of dehydration.
Certain ideas go dead. We leave, dead cattle behind.
Yeah, leave a child or two.
A couple of our brainchilds.
It's a dangerous world in which we live.
Yep, it's a rough and tumble life in the podcast world.
Yeah, the barren Wild West.
Yep. But there are always things that we can talk about.
Yeah.
When it comes to movies and digital media, that we're going to talk about some of that today. We're going to bring you some of the information about the world going on in movies.
Oh yeah. Breaking news. Netflix is taking a big dive in their stocks.
They have. It was, what was it, over 20%?
Yeah. And they've lost a lot of, largely in part to the loss of subscribers.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of conjecture as to why this is happening.
Yeah, and it was something like Netflix. It's really hard to pin down any one thing as being, this is definitely it, and everyone is going to have their reasons they think it is.
Theories.
But what would you say? Where would you start to look?
Personally, I would look at the fact that we're post-COVID and people are less in their homes. The workforce is largely returned back to normal working, or 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so they can't watch all of Bridgerton in one day, as many people, of which I know, watch. I haven't watched it, but it was just what came to mind. And just the fact that I feel like, honestly, it's kind of getting a little stagnant. And they're the top dog, even with the 20% hit. They're still the top dog in streaming services.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, I think people are largely, it's a money issue because they hike their price and their subscriptions. The potential crackdown on family sharing of passwords could also have been
that could
a contributing
lead people
factor.
away from it. Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think contributed to this?
Oh, I think all of that's probably spot on.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's. I'm also would be interested to know how the COVID production schedules play into that.
Oh yeah.
Just in terms of what are the shows that would have been coming out right now that aren't, just simply because productions were delayed, because we're still dealing with the
Stranger
delayed
Things,
schedules.
for sure.
Yeah,
That's been delayed by quite a lot, both the
Right.
last season and this season.
And so in that case,
One of the flagships.
right, something that really carries and keeps people tuned in.
Yeah.
And so all these things have been delayed. So I just wonder if that's not part of it, and that once they get production fully ramped up, if that will start to bring people back,
Yeah.
But again, like you're saying, people aren't stuck in their homes anymore like they were.
No.
And so I don't know that
Yeah.
they're going to come back in the same type of numbers, but we'll see.
I think what you're seeing is a lot of people placing bets, like from the commercial realm and the industry, placing bets on, or did place bets, put their eggs in baskets for how people would come out of COVID, and how the industry would look out of COVID. And I think you're seeing certain realities are different than what they're thinking, and potentially could be going in a different direction. So I think that's largely, I mean, we're going to get into the subject later, but that's a big part of this pendulum is we don't really necessarily know where we're going. I mean, plenty of things can pop in the way and turn on a dime. I mean, there's a lot of global things that have happened recently. So,
and with COVID too, another factor in all of that is that once COVID hit, then everyone ran to streaming services.
Oh yeah.
So everyone started coming up with their own things. We've got Paramount Plus now. We have there's another new one that came out during COVID.
I mean,
But then you've got
Disney Plus came out just before
just
COVID.
before COVID.
Yeah.
And so then you've got a lot of production being. There's a lot more competition for what platform your movie or your show is going to land on.
HBO Max came out during.
That's true.
COVID,
HBO
yeah.
Max was a massive one
Brought
because they took all
straight
of
to
Warner
cinema
Brothers.
or from cinema, yeah.
So there's just a lot of factors playing into what's going on with Netflix. I don't think it's the end of Netflix.
No.
Yeah, this isn't the beginning of the end for them.
No.
That is for sure.
No, they're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Maybe pivot a little bit.
But we'll just have to see what happens, and we'll talk more about movie production in the future here in just a little bit.
Cool things.
You know what's cool?
What's cool?
This new mixing board we have for this podcast.
I didn't even notice.
This is definitely the coolest thing. If you're on YouTube, you can see the thing here.
Look
But
at it.
we,
Just look at it.
for those of you who don't know, typically, if you're not aware of how people typically produce stuff,
Yeah.
typically what happens is what we do, where we record the episode, then I go in and I edit it, and I add the music, and I add the different stingers in between, like you just heard with the cool things.
Yes.
And so we edit all of those things together. But with this particular mixing board that I just got that's made specifically for podcasting, we've got a sound pad with all of the music cues queued up. So if you hear weird things in this episode, this is take 1, episode 0 of our recording.
Which we 100% didn't start the podcast and not record on this new setup.
We most definitely did not
Yeah.
record our
We
entire
didn't get
intro
a good 8 minutes into the podcast.
before realizing that we were not recording.
Yeah.
But it is super cool. It looks cool, and it just feels cool.
I think it's
actually
legit.
recording with live music. So it's pretty.
It's nice being on
pretty
this
awesome.
other side of the podcast world because before doing this, I didn't know any of this.
This is sick.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
pretty
great.
cool.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
So what's going on for you? What have you been finding cool this week?
Oh man, so many things. Speaking of Netflix, I was watching Making Fun, which is an amazing show on Netflix. It's I would say it's directed towards children. Like it's a family show where you can all watch it together, but it's a couple of these makers that are popular on YouTube. You have Dorista, and there's just a swath of a couple other dudes. Like it's a circle of dudes that some of them used to be engineers, toy makers, and they all are really good with working with their hands, working with metal, working with wood. And they all take these calls from these children, and they think of these crazy ideas, and they're like, I want a cat a cat catapult that launches cat litter at something and then it explodes. And then they're like, yeah, we can do that. And then they do it. And then they throw a little twist in the middle of it. And, but it's really cool for like, especially the dads, cause there's so many tools. It's all like Milwaukee. They have CNC machines. They have welders.
awesome.
They got a lathe. They got everything. And it's hilarious. The guys are really funny. You'd want to hang out with all of these guys.
Yeah, that's cool.
And also from like the film aspect of it, the editing and just how hilarious it is.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like it's just packed with like memes and like really funny editing and songs. And me and my brother-in-law were up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, like midnight to 2, just watching this show. That was
cool.
largely meant for families. And we were just
Right.
cracking up, thinking it was hilarious. And so, yeah, it's just really wholesome. You can watch it with all of your family.
That's awesome.
And I really wish it was a show when I was a kid because it's just really cool.
That's cool. That'll
Check it out.
inspire you to go build your own creations with your
It
children.
inspired me to buy more tools is what it's going to do.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think I need a
wives,
welder.
definitely let your husband watch this show.
Yeah, it's the dream shop. It's amazing.
That's
once you see
awesome.
it.
It's like watching, is it Adam Savage with Tested on YouTube, where he does all of the different types of builds of random stuff.
Exactly. It reminds me of Mythbusters. Like they do a little Mythbusters joke in the middle where they do like an edit where like they cut the thing out and then they drop the thing that says Dorista on it or Making Fun.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
nice.
Ooh,
Hang on.
hold up. Karate chop.
Karate job to the microphone.
Good old callback to our old Karate Kid episode.
Yes.
Swipe the leg. Anyway, that was my cool thing.
Sweet. That is very cool. I'm gonna have to go check that out.
Definitely need to.
And now, our feature presentation.
Albert Mohler has a podcast called The Briefing, in which
We got beef with him.
we've got a beef with Albert
Got a
Mohler.
big old beef. He said movies are dead.
If you don't know who Albert Mohler is, he is the president. Is he currently the president of the Southern
Or at
Baptist
least was for a while. I think he still is.
Southern Baptist Theological Seminary,
Mm-hmm.
and a
Boys
all-around he's a theologian, historian / cultural commentator. He's a hard one to define.
He has many
in terms
hats.
of what he does.
And he does it well.
He carries it with style.
Yeah, he does.
And so this podcast, The Briefing, is just, I think it's he calls it daily commentary on.
News and events from a Christian worldview.
There you go. See, Elijah's even got the
Listen to it every
tone
morning.
memorized. Yeah. So right after the Oscars, he did an episode and talked, of course, about Will Smith and the situation there.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also referenced an article by Ross Douthat, a columnist for the New York Times. He does a lot of Christian cultural commentary, but he also does movie reviews.
Yeah.
I believe at National Review, or where is
He
is?
He was the chief editor for The Atlantic, and then is now just a opinion columnist in the New York Times.
Yeah, there's somewhere he does movie reviews for though.
Yeah, I don't know.
So he's definitely he's been in the movie world doing movie critic type stuff for a long time as well.
Yeah,
But
appreciate his writing. Really well written.
Yeah. So I didn't go read the article. I only read and heard Albert Mohler's take on it. So you read the article. So how would you describe what Ross Douthat says? Because what Albert Mohler seems to be saying that Douthat is saying is that movies are dead. And a friend of ours immediately texted us and said, "Hey guys, wrap up the podcast."
Albert
Call it
Mohler
quits.
says,
Albert Mohler says movies are dead.
and that must mean that they're dead.
So we want to talk about this. But first of all, what kind of is his article about?
So the overall tone is basically like he addresses the fact that everyone's talking about, oh well, the Oscars are dead, man. Like they're trying to reinvent themselves. They're dead. Just say they're dead. And he's like, yeah, the Oscars are dead. But you know what's dying is movies, not necessarily like watching film, but watching film together in a theater as that cultural experience is largely going away because the money is going to different things. It's going to streaming. It's going, largely to streaming and onto your phone, and onto the small screen of your house.
Yeah.
And so we're losing that experience that we had. And he brought up an example of the fact that like it used to be like a coming of age as well, was to watch your first rated R movie. Like that was something that like that happened in a theater, but no longer does that happen in a theater. It happens in your home, where like and it doesn't happen communally either. It happens on your own phone by yourself. And so you lose that aspect. And he makes the comparison to it being like a church. Where everybody kind of communes together and watches the movie and gets to just have that kind of fellowship in a way, which I thought was really interesting. And obviously Mohler caught on to that and went, oh, it's a flag. We should probably talk about this.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and his thing wasn't just a naysay. He just provided the direction that this will most likely go, or good directions to take this, how to preserve film, and kind of what the landscape is probably going to look like in the next decade.
So what do you think then about that kind of thesis? Do you think movies are dead?
I would say largely most of the people I know only go to see a movie once a year. And it's I think will become more of a novelty if it continues on the track that it's going. Most people only go to see like all of the great auteur filmmakers have decried. People are only going to see Spider-Man, No Way Home, or Avengers, and nobody's going to see their The Last Duel or the Quartet or any of these or the Calvaries, like these these artisan films, and largely that wasn't the case previously. Like people would go to see these more older films, but now and what he talks about in his article is just the fact that things that people go see are more for a teenage sensibility. There's no like adult movies that are making it. Like even like the adult movies are like Deadpool.
Right.
That's what's passes as an adult thing, but it's largely based off of teenage.
Yeah, it's an
teenage
adolescent
likes.
style.
Yeah. And so
that's really interesting.
The cultural taste and what people will sacrifice their money and their time to go see is that.
Yeah.
But
that's for sure.
No, I think that it is largely going away. in terms of like how much money. Like I think The Northman is coming out.
Yeah,
Or already came out this weekend. I think it's one of the greatest examples of what's happening. They put so much money into advertising for it. Even Eggers talked about this. They're putting so much money into this movie as if it will return as a Braveheart. And he's like, that is not what my movie is. Like it's a weird stepbrother of Braveheart at that.
Okay.
And so it's not going to return the way it is. And so, I mean, what's his face kind of, what's his name again? The article guy.
Oh, Ross Douthit. Yeah.
Yes, Ross. I'll go with Ross.
Okay.
Ross talked about that, and just the fact that that's kind of the what's happening is that studios are most likely going to have to pivot, and they're going to have to, yes, maybe put in the money on your Batmans, your Spider-Mans, and put all that money out in advertising, but and charge regular admission or maybe more than admission with what they did with Batman. Batman was more expensive than anything like any other movie. It wasn't just a general ticket. It was a Batman ticket. And so one of the options that Ross gives is that you have your big ones that have all the advertisement, have all the trailers, but then you also have your artisan films that have less advertising, less trailers, and you just go to watch the movie and it's maybe a cheaper price than going to see Batman. And so that's a potential way to go about recovering film.
So something that I think of when I hear people talk about movie watching and movies being dead, specifically like movie theaters, people aren't going to see movies. Of course, this was a topic of conversation before COVID, and after COVID, we're still waiting to see how they recover.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of questions in the air that are really a result of the COVID lockdowns, and we're still trying to figure out what it looks like on the other side of that. But what I think is or what intrigues me is just where do people gather, right? Like where do people in any space come together to do anything together culturally in our time, right? Like it's not that they're not at the movie theaters because they're somewhere else in terms of they're at a different cultural gathering. It's
they're just in their bedroom.
At home. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're online. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram.
They're on HBO Max on their phone.
They're watching TikTok and jumping over to HBO Max to catch a show and then going back. You know, like it's not the same viewing. It's not the same cultural moment that it was in the past.
Yeah.
And so then so I think there's some really interesting opportunities to go forward with this. One thing I think is that obviously streaming is the future in terms of at least and when I say the future, I mean it's where you're going to put your movie now.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100, if you're going to make a movie today, your target you need to start with the idea of an online release.
You plan your budget around that, because if you don't, you're going to have Matrix. You're going to have all these movies that tank so hard.
And you are not the Matrix. So like you have no hope.
Yeah, it's like The Northman. It's not Braveheart. You're setting it up for failure when you put all that money into it.
Absolutely.
And it's not what you think it is.
And if you don't have any of that like IP that's already been established to bank on, then good luck.
Yeah.
So you better figure out a way to get onto the platforms where people already are.
Yeah.
And then just pray that the gods of the algorithm will smile upon you.
Yeah.
And of course there's things you can do to, do a better release or a worse release. So it's not that it's totally outside of your hands.
Yeah.
It's just that the picture is very different. So filmmakers have to be starting with that particular end in mind.
Yeah.
And the movie release is not the same thing it used to be. So it used to be that's the big thing we're after. If you get a movie, it's legit if you get it in theaters.
Yeah.
And it's not if you're selling it on Blu-ray or DVD and on Amazon. But now the temptation has been to think, okay, the theater movies are the real ones and the streamers, they're the DVD.
Yeah.
Well, that's just not the case now. And so you've got to adjust to that reality. We are in a new time. And honestly, like, I love movies and I love the theater experience.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But I don't go to see nearly as many movies in the theater as, I just don't. So for all of my love of movies, that's not really how I consume them the majority of the time. It's only for very particular films that I end up going. And the truth is that the majority of the types of films I would enjoy and want to watch aren't in the theaters.
Yeah.
So like, it doesn't, that doesn't work out either. So I think it get there. So where would you want to go forward with this, or where would you see opportunity in this landscape?
I think I obviously, like, I think I would agree with Talthit's idea. I think that's a smart way to move forward.
So cheapening,
like
some
going
of the tickets, basically,
like the way that opera and concerts work today, where certain artists you're just going to pay more money to go see them, and then certain artists you just spend $5 to go see. Sometimes you spend $20.
Right.
It's not the $200 ticket that you're going to go see Metallica or whoever it is. You're just going to go see Joe Schmo,
a local band,
the coffee house for $5. Like, but sometimes Joe Schmo and the coffee house for $5 is just what you want.
Yeah.
And it's good. And sometimes it's better than the $200 thing. So I think that provides a lot of freedom. And I think it is hard to do that, though, just with the way that where we're at, with just the fact that you now have like fewer chain theaters. Like we've seen Regal disappear.
Yep.
All we really have is like Cinemark and AMC, which I think Cinemark is off of AMC.
Yeah.
And then you have local theaters, and those are the two that you have. And so I don't know. I don't necessarily know the way forward for them to succeed in business, but I would love to see that. And he brought that up of just the fact that companies need to let theaters play old movies, like let them watch classics, like because I was talking to my coworkers about that today. I'm like, what's a movie that you want to see in theater? Because what do you lose when you go to the small screen? And he brings that up in the article. You lose the impact of sound, of the score. Like there's a reason why, like, watching Braveheart in the small screen, it still impacts you, but watching that in a theater with like all of the music and even Batman, I don't know necessarily how that's going to play. I haven't watched it at home, but the music playing in the movie theater was a lot for me. Like I was like, oh, this is so cool. And Dune and so many movies, where you get the spectacle of a huge screen of you're fully immersed. There's no thing blinking on your phone. So you're losing a lot. But I think it would be invaluable to be able to go back and go, you know what, that's a movie I need to see in theater.
Absolutely.
And then go to the theater and go see it.
Yeah, I would totally go see so many movies that are older that are on they're on my watch list right now.
Yeah.
That I know they're movies that I need to see. But if they showed up in our local theater, hey, we're watching Jaws. That was actually one that was shown at the Roxy Theater downtown here in Bremerton recently, this last summer. And
did you see it?
No, I didn't go see it there. I've seen it already, though. So it's not a good example of one I haven't seen. But it would be really cool to watch Jaws in an actual theater.
I'd love to go see like Jurassic Park in theater.
Oh, yeah.
Like I never got to see Avatar in theater, and everybody lost their minds over that. But I watch it today in the small screen. I'm like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Like I don't get it. I wasn't there in the IMAX with the big 3D glasses with their immersive Dolby sound around me with the audience like
and I think that's
sharing that experience.
Yeah, I think that's the way for a real big part of the way forward for movie theaters is that movie theaters have to realize that they live in a different world too.
Yeah.
And so however they operate, they need to operate differently than they have in the past. They cannot rely on what's coming out this summer to actually float their budgets. They've got to figure out other ways to do it. And I think that there's a real opportunity now for local people. So one of my dreams, I think, would be that I would own a movie theater.
That'd be cool.
And that then I would be able to curate and run the whole thing. And create now the thing is that so we go to a church, right?
Yeah.
Like so every week we have almost 200 people who gather together to worship God together. Right now that does not mean that all of them watch movies, but let's say there's 10% of those that watch movies. That's a community of 20 people who watch movies that if I had a theater and they have connections to me and they trust me as a local upstanding businessman, that they would show up to my theater, right? Like, so just by virtue of it's local, it's my people, it's like they would just show up. So since and that is built around a local community of people who are already engaged in one another's lives.
Yeah.
And so I think that since what I'm saying about the broader culture, our society just doesn't get together like we used to anywhere. There's not really a bunch of public spaces where we come together.
No.
Then what are those smaller communities? And this can go to what is the school district and your school board meetings to, city, your HOA, or like there's different venues of communities that actually have some kind of something they're coming together around.
Yeah.
And so if you have a movie theater that is able to tap into those local communities for different movie showings. So for the school, you connect with the local school and you give them discounted tickets for a movie field trip day or a history class or something, and they go watch them. Like there would be ways that you could tap in to those local communities that are already meeting and try to get them to come to the theater. So I think there's a lot of creative ways that theaters could go about it.
Yeah.
Or that people who, if you happen to have a community of people, you go to a church of 10,000 people and you've got connections, you've got options where then you have enough of like that critical mass to float a theater. Otherwise though, you're going to get, you and I went and saw Dune. This winter we went to the Roxy Theater downtown.
There's only 4 of us in the theater.
That was all.
Yeah.
And 3 of them, one of them was our friend, and then the other one was some random guy that was there too.
Yeah.
There's no way
it's a big theater
that it was worth that for the theater to run. And so they're paying someone to be out in the foyer to do the concessions. I'm assuming there's a projectionist, unless that person ran up. It was just her. Okay, so she ran up and started the movie. Yeah, so you've got one person who's being paid to run everything. So that's one person's pay that's being made. Our tickets weren't that expensive, so we're not paying crazy amounts of money for these tickets. Yet they still have the theater open, and the theater, I believe, is funded by a foundation, so they're not having to get the same kind of profits that
they're a historic theater. Yeah,
but if they weren't the historic theater, there's no way they'd be running. They'd be closed down. Yeah,
because everybody goes to the theater down the road, which is an individual theater. It's not owned by a chain, and they just go to that one.
Yeah, so it's just it's just a very different landscape for movie distribution and movie watching right now.
Yeah.
And so I think that communities can either a community can support a thing like that by we've got enough people who are going to be regularly using this that we can float the business, or something like this foundation where someone cares and says we want to make sure that this piece of history is preserved.
Yeah.
In which case, like any movie theater, period, forget the place. The fact that there is a movie theater might be a piece of history at some point down the road. So. It's just there's different ways. I don't personally bemoan the fact that theaters are leaving. I'll be sad if there was ever a day where I couldn't go to a theater. But the truth is technology is getting good enough that at least the experience of watching it can be pretty similar at a pretty decent price. And then you've got it at home. Now it's not the same thing.
No.
But in terms of like production quality and such, then you're getting
what you get.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I think that's definitely a good way to go about it and kind of go back to the best of what it was in terms of the fact that like it was a communal experience. And if we're going to go back to it, we got to lean in hard to the good.
Yep.
Like this is the good of it, is that people need to be together. They need to be like the benefits of having a shared narrative as a people has always been present until now. Right. As soon as a society, you can even see that with Russia. Where's their cultural through line? They've lost most of it in bits and pieces of their empire being moved and all this stuff. And so they don't have like this national history that they can really grab onto because it's so divided. But I think that's kind of like where we're at in terms of, you also had that benefit in the stories that we tell and the fact that like it used to, like it's progressively got more and more individualized in terms of the stories that people know. So not everybody knows the same stories. Like it's becoming more sparse. Whereas like when you had a movie theater and you only had a set number of movies, well, those are the only stories that you can talk about.
Right.
But now you have like so many different series that are coming out, the serial kinds of series, the Moon Knights, and then you have like the limited series like that, or like Mandalorian. But then you also have your like Money Heist and your weird like 32 episode series that show up on Netflix, your Great British Baking Show. You have all of these boop, 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 all these different things. And not everybody's watching the same thing. And so you're creating these subcultures within your greater culture that you kind of lose the language of where you can talk with each other in a cognitive way where your analogies aren't being understood by your neighbor,
Right.
which
Yep.
is crazy. Like, how is that possible with you and your neighbor don't talk the same?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
it's because you don't know your neighbor anymore, and let alone know the same stories as your neighbor. Like,
You don't talk to them. And when you sit down to watch something, there's not only 3 shows on, there are 3,000.
yeah,
You're picking from whatever sounds interesting to you.
exactly.
So-
And even the algorithm pushes you into a corner.
Yeah,
There's shows
right.
that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was on Netflix, because it's not in your algorithm. It doesn't pop
Yeah.
up, but it's there.
It'd be awesome if the algorithm just was like, hey, your neighbor's watching this. Watch this.
Yeah, yeah, it would be crazy, but
I don't know that you'd quite want that, but you know.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
But people work hard for their algorithms. Do you know that? Like, I was talking to people at work, and they're like, man, my sister got onto my Netflix, and she just ruined
Messed
my
up the whole
algorithm.
thing.
So now I'll have his anime showing up in my algorithm. And so
Okay.
I deleted my profile, and I
No
started
way.
a new one.
Oh, wow. Just to
I've
try
even
to
done this.
Teach it.
I've
Yeah.
had to delete it and start a new one just because, like, I just didn't want to see the same things popping up.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
interesting.
crazy how that works.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, well, this has been, another episode of the Foxfire Farmhouse, and we're going to talk about movies and keep doing that for a long time.
as long as we can.
Yeah. I will definitely continue for my whole life, whether we'll record them
Oh, yeah.
and publish them for a podcast.
Exactly.
I don't know about that.
It'll always be in my language.
But movies will always be something that is a common shared. I really think for movie theaters, maybe you're dead, but storytelling is not. And digital
never
media
will be.
is not.
Yeah.
At least not yet. I mean, I don't know about digital media, but I know storytelling will be around forever.
Yes.
And therefore, there will always be a place for commentary like this. And right now, I love movies, and I will probably love them for my life. And we'll see where we can talk about them more, where we can get them made, hopefully. And
Yeah.
I just want to be a part of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Telling stories, it's the greatest passion.
Yeah. So if you've got a movie you want us to talk about, or you have a comment or a question or a topic idea, send that to us. Podcast@foxfirefarmhouse.com. We'll queue it up for the next episode.